Shabbat Shalom. Welcome. Thank you. What's in a name? Well, quite a lot, as it turns out. At the beginning of Parshat Va'era, God has heard the cries of the Israelites and promises to redeem them. God instructs Moses and Aaron to go to Pharaoh and demand, Shlach et ami, let my people go. But after this dramatic opening, the Parsha abruptly gives a listing of the names of the heads of the fathers' houses. In chapter 6, verse 14, we get a list of names. The following are the heads of their respective clans. The sons of Reuben, Israel's firstborn, Enoch, Palu, Hezron, Carmi, families of Reuben. The sons of Simeon, Jemion, Jamin, Ochad, Yakin, Zohar, and Saul, the son of a Canaanite woman. Those are the families of Simeon. These are the names of Levi's sons, Gershon, Kohat, Merari, sons of Gershon, sons of Kohat, the sons of Merari. We hear of Moses' lineage, Amram taking to wife his father's sister Yocheved. This is where we at least fill in a little bit of Moses' background. And she bore to him Aaron and Moses, etc. Quite a long list of names of people that had come into Egypt and their descendants. It seems a jarring shift away from the soaring narrative. Right on its face, it would seem to be an acknowledgement of Moses' parentage, and a couple of wives are actually mentioned here. Oh my goodness, how subversive to have a couple of wives mentioned. And I want to thank Rabbi Mark Angel for drawing my attention to some of this teaching, as well as a number of other teachers that are swarming around in my head and heart today. But this imposition of the names is really actually more than just filling in Moses' parentage. It's a striking contrast to the narrative of last week. Because in Parshat Shmot, we read that Pharaoh was afraid of the growing numbers of Israelites in Egypt. As you know, he decided to enslave them and have their male children murdered. But the Torah does not mention any names of Israelites or Egyptians, except for Shiphrah and Puah, from the time that Joseph died until the birth of Moses. Shiphrah and Puah were the brave Egyptian midwives who stood up to Pharaoh. Pharaoh is a title, not a name. People had become nameless objects, oppressors and oppressed, masters and slaves. When humans are reduced to things, both the oppressor and oppressed are dehumanized. They internalize false ideas about who they are and about their worth as human beings. The generations between Joseph and Moshe had become a nameless mass of anonymous slaves. Dr. Bruno Bettelheim, who had been a Jewish prisoner in a concentration camp, wrote that the prisoners there feared not only for their physical lives, they feared that they would come to see themselves as the Nazis, may their names be blotted out, saw them, as animals. Dr. Bettelheim wrote, the main problem we had was to remain alive and unchanged. The more absolute the tyranny, the more debilitated the subject. After these generations of slavery, with a sense of redemption starting to flicker on the horizon, the Israelites are given back their names. And it can't be a coincidence. We and they are reminded that they were human beings with names and personalities, not beasts of burden. And anyone who has lived with an animal knows they have deep souls as well. One of Moses' initial challenges was to get the Israelites to return and recognize their own humanity. So we get this list of names. It's in the first triennial reading, so it'd be a couple years till it's formally read again. But it's worth taking a moment with the names. Some names actually have been brought back into some common usage, and others probably never will be. But these were real people who were given names by their parents. They were born into slavery, but they were human beings, whole and three-dimensional. Reclaiming a name is a groundwork laying for the liberation process. There's a lot of dehumanizing going on. And sometimes, though, anonymity is what is needed. Sometimes it's just as well that our names are not known, and it's just as well that the names of others are not known. How can this be? I've been hearing a lot lately from within and without feelings of helplessness, of just not knowing what to do, how to get up in the morning, and where we might possibly make a difference, given everything that we see. And particularly in the time in which we live, when the entire world comes in an unrelenting stream into the palm of our hand. We do literally feel like we've got the whole world in our hands. And that can be a wonderful thing, but it can also be very frightening and very overwhelming. So what is it that human beings can do when we're in a time when we feel that we can't make a difference and we can barely reach out and touch another person? Two experiences in the last week have given tiny me, this microorganism trying to survive in this inhospitable planet, a feeling of hope. Just a morsel, it's a flickering ember, but it's helped a lot. And I recommend experiences like this to anyone who can have them. Even if you can't do them personally, tell people who can that they need to do a couple of things like this, because they've restored a sense of myself as, yes, an anonymous person, but maybe being able to make a little molecule of difference. One is an experience that I spoke about a couple of years ago at either our first or second high holidays of the pandemic. I think it was the second, 2021. So bear with me, please, if you happen to have heard that sermon, but it's worth repeating a piece of it, to me anyway. I got myself together and went to give a pint of blood. It never ceases to amaze me, that experience. And I know not everyone can do it, and that's okay, but if you can give, you gotta do it. And if you can tell someone you love who can do it, you gotta tell them. Get over to your Red Cross and open a vein. At that point, your identity falls away. You're just a blood type and a human being. And as long as your iron is okay and you can answer the questions sufficiently, you can give your pint of blood. And you can't give more than a pint. You can't give less, or it's not a full donation. You can't give more than every 8 or 9 weeks. You have to let your body replenish and be ready to give again. So you might want to give more, but you can't. You don't know who you're giving to. And the person that receives that pint of blood will never know from where it came, from whom it came. There's something gloriously in common about our humanity at that moment. That pint of blood could be put into someone's arm, someone with whom I profoundly disagree, and maybe have nothing noticeable else in common, except that all of our blood is red, and they can receive O positive. And I can't do anything about that. I have to let that pint of blood go and embrace the Talmudic notion that if you can save one life, you can save a world. I don't know if that's totally true, but it's a gift that the Talmudic sages gave us when we're feeling tiny and ineffectual. A pint of blood can save a life. And if you can't give a pint, make a little donation in whatever way you can to people who are doing life-saving work. And the other experience was just a couple of days ago here in our social hall. The Tikkun Olam, the Repair the World Committee of our Southside Collaborative, near Tamid, Am Tikva, and Or Shalom, does a once-a-month bag lunch packing for the homeless of San Francisco. Talk about a tiny spoonful of help. We pack 150 bags, either here or at Brotherhood Way, and February maybe at Or Shalom's new location, or possibly not. We may be right back here in the social hall. And it's just a little bag lunch with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a string cheese, a granola bar, a tangerine, and a drink. But at that moment, some person that we will never meet, because we're not the homeless outreach team going to people under blankets and in tents and on the street corners, maybe we could do that in some version, needs to be trained people who know what they're doing though. Some person that we will never meet is going to get a bag lunch, did on Thursday, from someone they'll never meet. And it does make a difference. Sometimes, kind of horror, we have too many volunteers and my own hands aren't needed. I just help clean up and cheerlead as best I can. But the other day we were a small group and my hands were needed, and it was so helpful to me to participate in an activity like that. If you can spare less than an hour next time we do it, I really want to acknowledge our Tikkun Olam representatives and those who were there. Thank you so much. That little gesture, and again, if you can't be there in person, the Tikkun Olam has a kitty, and you are very invited to support it so that we can purchase the supplies that are needed, and the good volunteers who do that, my hat's off to you. These are such tiny things, and they might not change the life of the person who receives the sandwich or the pint of blood. But I tell you, with every ounce of strength I have, it makes a difference to the giver. And ultimately, that may be the life that we save or change. Maimonides listed levels of giving, and the highest level of giving is actually to extend a loan to someone or set them up in business so that they can be self-sufficient. But the second highest level of giving, according to the great Rambam, is anonymous giving. When the identity of the giver is unknown and the identity of the receiver is unknown, because that's giving for the best reasons. That's not claiming names. That's actually letting go of ego. And it may be those kinds of acts of shared humanity that have the best chance of bringing us to redemption. Martin Buber spoke about the necessity to enter into relationships not from a place of I, it. So much of the world we treat as an it, and so much of the world treats us, no matter who we are, as its, as faceless, nameless, one-dimensional opportunities to get something. He turned our hearts to the idea that we should be in relationships that have I and thou at the center. A sense of honor, a sense of uplift, a sense of I see you, I recognize you because you are like me. If in no other obvious way than by the color of the blood in our veins and the pangs of hunger that each of us has, that need to be addressed so that we can do this good work. We need to feed ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves. And we need to take care of others, even if we don't know them and they will never know us. There's a time to be named and a time to be anonymous. Let each of those times unfold themselves to us, and may our relationships, known or unknown, remind us of what is right and good in this world. Shabbat Shalom.